All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex. I am a student in the English master's program. I always have to pause and think because we don't really say by year, we say by how many semesters we've been in the program. So this will be my second semester currently. And so far, I've really liked the program. In terms of my background, before coming here to UCF, I went to the New College of Florida where I studied English with a minor in rhetoric and writing, and I took some classes on blogging, and I also did a course on blogging that I was able to build myself. And then part of that project was kind of making my own blog, but I did it in a way that I was able to kind of move into with my job, which was pretty cool, which I'll definitely talk about that a little bit as we go. But overall, I wanted to have this training just because I think blogging is a useful skill, and it also is something that you can put into your professional portfolio as well as on your resume. So for our agenda, I'm going to introduce you guys to blogging. We're going to talk about the steps to create a blog. We're also going to talk about how blogging can be a professional skill and how you can use LinkedIn, resumes, and portfolios to showcase this. I'm going to give you guys some tips, and I'm going to give you guys some places that you guys can blog, and we'll do a question and answer session. So the first question is, what is a blog? And I'm sure for some people it's very obvious, but I feel like blogging, people think they know what it is, but they don't really always know what it is. People often confuse blogging as something where it's just some paragraphs that you put online and that they're different themed and they're just kind of quick succession. And that's partially true, but typically there are websites with multiple short posts, but they can be centered around a theme. Themes kind of change depending on what you're talking about. There's a lot of travel blogs, and that goes back into personal or business use. So businesses often will have blogs to kind of showcase what their service is. And people often have personal blogs. If they like to travel, they might record all of their whereabouts, things that they recommend you bring with you if you go on a trip. So there's different types of blogs. And it definitely kind of works for TechCom that you can have a personal blog about things and issues that you're interested in, just as well as if you work for a company, you could definitely blog. One of the things about blogs in general, because they're short posts of information, you want to have visual components, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go. But definitely images are very big, having different parts of the blog that are not just text, and specifically text that's blocked together. It's often conversational or informal. For example, you can use personal pronouns, and you can pretty much do anything that you could not do in an informal paper, which is pretty nice because when you think about it, if you're applying for a job, you're going to be typically very formal. But if you link this stuff, they can also see a different side of you and kind of get to know you as a person a little bit more and what your values are and what you care about. Additionally, blogs are updated frequently. Typically, people will blog either once a week or maybe every 2 weeks. Of course, it depends on your schedule, but one of the biggest part about blogs is that they're short and they're updated frequently. So my next point is blogging as a genre. Writing as a whole, there's so many different genres. And one of the things that sets blogging apart is that it's short. Typically, you shouldn't write more than 500 words. 250 to 500, I would say, is that sweet spot. Again, you want to be informal. And one of the things I like about feature-wise with blogs are bullet points. It seems really weird to include bullet points, and I'm sure you're thinking what can I include with bullet points? But a lot of times, if you're referencing something, you can do that in a bullet point format. It feels really weird at first to go from paragraphs to bullet points, but it's visually pleasing for your user or your reader. And that's one aspect of blogging that I think is really nice, is because it's not chunked text. So people read it and they want to read it quick. Additionally, there's titles and subheadings. You usually want 2 to 3. 2 to 3 because you're not going to have that much content. Usually you have a short intro, and then you'll have some context, and then the text itself. Because it's so small in text, you don't really want too many subheadings because then you're not going to be giving a lot of explanations. And it also, again, breaks apart what you're talking about. And then also, again, the visual aspect. You could use images and multimedia, so videos, music, and charts. It always depends, like, again, what you're working on. So on the right, you can see I have like a little map. This is from like a blog that I had done at one point. And the blog was talking about, go outside, and here's where you can go outside where other people might not be. And you can kind of write over here. So I did a map because I thought it was a fun way for people to visually see what I'm talking about. And here's a visual example. This is actually from our FTC blog, but you can see how there's many different elements to the blog. So we have like our title, we have subheadings here, and then we have some text, and then we have bullets. So in this article, we talked a little bit about project management strategies, and we linked it to certain apps and websites, which we used by, of course, putting it into like bullet points just to make it easier. And then we gave visuals. So that kind of shows you how a blog can be kind of chunked up without it being text heavy. So some steps to create a blog post. This can vary, and that's totally fine. This is like what I think is the easiest way to kind of go about writing a blog post. The first thing is to pitch an idea, if it's to yourself or to a team. Organize a few ideas for subpoints, because again, the subpoints are pretty important once you have subheadings. Create a rough draft, add the subheadings, edit the draft, add images, add title, and revise for consistency. Consistency can kind of mean different things. You might have a style guide if you're working with other people. If you're just working on your own, totally fine to kind of just do your own thing. You can also create your own style guide as well. And then I said this is optional, and that's pretty much based on where you're blogging. So I said add a tag or a hashtag. For this, I mean, it really just depends. Like if you use WordPress is a very popular blogging, like it's an online web source that's a tool. And you can see on the right, we have like little tags. So if you were to tag it, what it does is it'll make it so that your article is spread further based on where the tags are and what the subjects are. So it can bring people outside of your general scope of audience. And that's why I like tags, but not every website has tags. So I would say it works better for web sources that are specifically blogging related. And so then I have some general blogging tips. So one is to theme your blog around a topic. The second is to create an outline before writing. The third is to use keywords relevant to technical communication. And then use tags in your post, but be specific. Like in technical communication, there's certain terminology. Use that terminology and put that in as a tag. You also want to use a variety of visuals, and you want to examine other blogs for inspiration. I think it's really helpful to like look at other people's blogs, even if it's a different theme, just because you can kind of see how they do their visuals and how they write. Also, cite and hyperlink sources for things you make references to, and you can even do that in your bullets. Post regularly and share your posts on social media. I'm going to go back real quick to the theming around a blog. So you can definitely go pretty broad. So like, for example, when I was an undergraduate, I wanted to do a blog for the writing center that I worked at. And when I first pitched it, I was kind of told, yeah, but what is it about? And I was like, well, it's writing. And they're like, that's cool, but like it has to have a theme. So I went with productivity, and I primarily focused on like project management strategies, because during that time, it was like peak COVID. A lot of people were online, some people were home, and that just seemed to be like a really good topic. So all of our posts that I had on there were all specific to being productive when it comes to writing. So that's an example of how I took a topic and then I made it more specific. And that can be really good in terms of like showcasing your skills. So our next topic is, how can blogging help your career? So for one, blogging is a skill just in general. Many businesses use blogs, so if they know that you know how to like use a blog, it looks good. But it also showcases your writing ability, which is important in tech comm, and it demonstrates that genre knowledge that you have of writing. I think I said it before, but blogging definitely allows your personality to shine through, because when you're like submitting things for a job, or if you have like a brief interview, they might have a little bit of an idea of how your resume is and what you're like and what kind of things you're interested in, but they can't really tell fully. So blogging kind of just expands on that. So we're going to look at my old resume. It needs to be updated, but I'm kind of going over resume tips. Some of it's a little bit more broad. Some of it's more specific to how you can incorporate blogging into your resume. So for one, I always like to do a writing and editing experience section instead of doing the like relevant experience, just because I feel like it's more specific to like tech comm. Maybe somebody else has another cool idea of something that they could do. I definitely would want to hear it. But we're kind of in a digital world where I feel like a lot of resumes are put online now. I haven't really ever been to an interview where I've had to bring a resume with me. So now that we're kind of geared toward online, I feel like hyperlinking articles or your blog post is really cool. And there's two different ways that you can kind of go about it. So we have the first one, which is down here under the student writing assistant peer tutor section. And so I have the part where I talk about managing the writing resource center blog, Get It Right. And so I hyperlinked the name there just to kind of say, obviously, like this is the blog. You can click it and look at it. The second way that I have is to use the name or the title of articles or blog posts that you have. So in the New College of Florida Catalyst student newspaper one, even though those are not blog posts, they're like articles from when I did the student newspaper, you can do and apply the same concept to your blog post. Even if you have a personal blog, you can still put this as writing and editing experience. It doesn't have to be a job. So you can describe it as a personal blog, and then underneath that, you just give the title of your blog and then link some articles. So that's one way that you can put it onto your resume, and hopefully somebody will look at it. There's like, it's very controversial of whether or not people actually like read that much into your like resume, but if they ever like look at it because they're maybe stuck between you and somebody else, it's really cool that they have this extra resource available. And that's something that I think is really different and could set people apart. So I definitely would suggest hyperlinking things into your resume. Next, we're going to talk about LinkedIn. So you can have blogs on LinkedIn. You can share your blog in the summary section. You can share links to your blog, and you can write an article function on your homepage. Those are some ways that you can kind of use that and put it on LinkedIn. I also want to plug LinkedIn Learning. If you're not familiar with LinkedIn Learning, it is a free resource to us as UCF students, and you're able to go online and do courses pretty much on anything. They have different ones for tech comm specifically, so you can do like XML, but they also have a lot on writing blog posts. Like I said, it's pretty much anything. You just type stuff in, type in a keyword, and you'll see what comes up. But what I thought was cool, they have one on WordPress. WordPress is one of my favorites for blogging just because it's easy to understand. There's also a lot of flexibility, and they have a free version. So that's one that I would recommend. And again, you have the resource available to you through LinkedIn Learning. So my next point is professional portfolios. That can look kind of different for everybody, but I like website formats, specifically Google Sites, because it's free and it's really flexible to change. You can add your resume, and then you can add that as a hyperlink. Like you can add, I would definitely like put your updated resume on there, but you can also like add different things. So variety of writing samples. I like to do it where I use the homepage function. So at the top right, you can see how you have an about me, a resume, a blog post. You want to select different types of writing for your professional portfolios. Even though like most of it should be tech comm related, having a blog post section could be really useful, mostly because it shows that you're able to do something that's a very different style of writing. And it shows again that you have genre specific knowledge. So you might be wondering, where can you blog? FTC, we have a blog. It's run by the publication committee members, which includes myself, but you can also freelance as a student if you don't want to commit to being in the publication committee. Here and then you can like freelance and send us some articles. You just have to pitch it, and I'll get a little bit more into that soon. But it's very low stakes. You don't have to worry. Again, it doesn't take too much time. If you need like a super long amount of time, that's fine too. You also can blog for STC Florida, which is another really cool thing to put on your resume. You also can have a personal blog. So we have WordPress. That to me is probably like the best place to start blogging, mainly because of the tags, and then it's free. There's also that LinkedIn Learning course that you can take via UCF. And we have Weebly, Wix blog, and then Google site. I would say like in that order, that kind of ranks like the best blogs. I would definitely suggest WordPress, but if anybody else has any advice on a word or like a personal preference for like what they use for blogging, I think that'd be cool to hear about. And then we have blogging for FTC. I'm going to go quickly over on how you would blog for FTC if you were not wanting to join the publication committee. You can email us at ucf.ftc@gmail.com and pitch an idea. But if you also don't know what to write about, we can help you with that. We have plenty of ideas. We can send you some things. We'll also help guide you. We have a blogging style guide now, which I'll also drop the link for that in the chat. But essentially, we created a publication or a style guide that will be soon on our website under resources, but it'll overall help make it so that all of our articles are coherent and consistent. And hopefully that'll be helpful for anybody that's like starting off, because we have like the full structure to it as well. We have a way that like you can kind of use that to kind of shape what you're writing. So there is a lot of support and help through both the blogging style guide, and then you can just ask us as publication committee members and we will review anything that you guys submit. So that's one way that you guys can go about blogging for FTC. And so as just a quick recap of the presentation, we discussed what a blog is, how it differs from other type of writing. We talked about the steps to create a post and how blogging can help you with your career and technical writing. And we also talked about the places that you can go to start your blogging journey. Do you guys have any questions?
First off, thanks so much, Alex. That was really great intro to blogging, and I definitely loved hearing all of that information too.
One question sorry.
That's all good. Sorry.
One question I wanted to ask really quick is, do you ever incorporate SEO when you're putting your blog out on the internet?
I have not, but that would definitely be helpful for sure.
Okay.
I definitely think it would be useful.
I did have a couple questions I can bring up. One of them I wanted to ask is just reiterating on the point of like where to start with blogging, because I know it's something I've considered in the past, but I've never really like started my own blog. And so I was wondering if someone is trying to think of what to write about, whether they have a bunch of just like a mix of different ideas, or don't know how to stick to a particular theme, how would you advise to start? Or like, what do you think is a good place to start from for someone who doesn't know where to start?
I would definitely say a brainstorming session of just writing down every single topic or idea that comes to mind. This might just come from having like a writing tutor background, because that's pretty much where most of my experience has been. But when you're starting to blog, you want to find topics that they're adding to a conversation for the most part. So sometimes like, yes, brainstorming, but part of that can be like looking again at other people's blogs, looking at people in your field, even if it's not a blog, maybe nobody's done a blog post about something, but there's like other ideas out there. You could literally go to technical writing, like the Reddit pages, and just see what people are talking about, get inspiration, write it down, keep a log, and then as you go, find things that are interesting to you. Sometimes to me, the things that are most interesting are the things I don't know about. So then I have to learn as part of it.
Awesome, I like that. And I didn't consider just scouting the internet to see what topics are being talked about. That could definitely be a good way to kind of like get into the flow of writing. And
Yeah,
to follow up to
definitely.
that, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say that was it.
Okay, got you. I was gonna say another question that came to mind, talking about the flow of writing. How do you build up either motivation or stamina to write regularly for a blog?
I think one of the best things that you can do when you're blogging is after you've planned it, it doesn't have to be the same day. Take an hour and just sit down and write it. It can be the worst first draft that you've ever seen, but as long as you have words on paper, that's always really the benefit. I come from a writing center background, so like my first thing is always to tell people just to sit down and write. And everybody's like, I don't know what to do. But a lot of times when you force yourself to write, even if it feels like it's just garbage, dumpster fire, it's something and it's something to go off of, and you can get your writing to be in a better place from there.
Mhm. I like that, and it is, well, personal experience too. It is hard to get a first draft out.
Yeah, and I do find it helpful for some, not for everybody, but for some people, there are people who just in general, they can schedule writing time. This might go kind of more into like Kanban method and just how you set and prioritize your schedule. But I think it can be useful for some people to either set 30 minutes to an hour a day for writing. It doesn't have to be capped at like academic writing. It could be for your blog, it could be for academic writing. Just kind of give yourself 30 minutes to an hour each day set aside for writing. And then whatever you end up using that time for is still going to help you in the long run.
I like that, keeping a schedule and just making sure you do the action of it. Absolutely. Danielle put a question in the chat. She asked, would it be better to center your blog on a specific niche subject, or is it fine to write about completely different topics each time?
I think it really just depends on what your goal is for the blog. Like, I think the more specific, the better. But that's more of a personal preference. I think it's really cool when you have things to say or like you kind of curate your blog. Yes, there are definitely tech com subreddits. um, but yeah, I definitely think having like a niche blog is good, but just also having a general blog is fine too. Either way, they're going to go on your resume and they're still going to look good. I definitely think it could be used as an outlet for blogging for sure. For those who are joining in possibly later on, Michael asked, have you ever seen Reddit used as an effective outlet for blogging? Yes, for sure. Okay, so Joy asked, how often should a writer update or post on their blog? Again, it just depends on what works for your schedule. I think the minimum should be once a month, but ideally at least once a week is usually pretty good. And then in order to grow your audience, I think like, again, if you use WordPress, it's really beneficial to have the tags, but then also share it on your social media. You can put it on your LinkedIn, pretty much put your blog posts literally anywhere that someone else can see. You possibly could put it on Reddit too, but I don't know if I would suggest that. And then what are my favorite genres to blog or read about? I like lifestyle blogs. I like travel blogs, mainly because I feel like I don't travel enough. So it's always fun to kind of read about other things, but there's always a blog for something.
I definitely agree with that. Thank you so much for just sharing your advice and tips with us.
Yeah, of course.
On that note, I'll ask too, do you have any favorite genres to write about, or when you do personal writing or blogging?
I like writing about writing, and I know that sounds kind of lame. I have, like I said, a strong background with tutoring and higher ed. So I tend to write about things that relate to writing. And I would also say project management strategies because I feel like now I can't unlearn it. And now anytime I have to do anything about a writing blog, it just kind of shows up,
I
which
love that.
definitely goes into tech com. And one of the things I've learned is like the things that we talked about before I even got into tech com, like within writing studies, translated just with a different name.
So a lot of those skills ended up being transferable.
Yeah, I would definitely say writing studies is one of those things, like they use very different terminology. But then when I was at like a job interview that was within tech comm, I started talking about like project management strategies and like very broad abstract senses. And I was like Kanban. And then we kind of talked about how Kanban's really just like agile and scrum. And it just kind of like went from there. But there's a lot of things that just they overlap, they just have different names. So knowing your audience is important because then you know what terminology to use.
Mhm. Absolutely. And yeah, between different audiences, sometimes tech comm has a lot of its own terminology that can kind of seem obtuse from the outside, but it really gets used in a lot of other places. I'd definitely be curious in hearing your answer too, more about project management, how that ties into like blogging and general writing, but also your experience in tech comm.
So project management really to me is more or less about how you spend your time in order to maximize like the amount of tasks and the quality of tasks that you have. So like when I said the comment earlier about for some people it's really helpful to set 30 minutes to an hour a day of writing. That's definitely a project management strategy. You can use like the Pomodoro technique as well if you're writing. I have to do that kind of often because I get sidetracked really easily. And that's when you like set a timer for like 25 minutes and then you give yourself a 5-minute break and you do that on and off. So a lot of that just goes into like lifestyle. It kind of shows up with writing because with writing, I think it's really easy to get distracted if you don't want to do it. I love writing, but I also hate writing. So there's times I don't want to do the writing, and I find that having project management strategies make sure I get everything done. And there's also some great resources out there, like there's Trello, which is just essentially a Kanban board, but then there's also like cool apps like Habitica that gamify your life. I definitely put that in an article because I think it's a really cool way for someone to like stay accountable with themselves. You kind of like literally gamify your life. You give tasks and then you earn points and you can like dress your avatar. So that's pretty cool. There's a lot of different ways that like in general it goes with writing, just like being able to set aside time. But also, of course, in tech comm, there's a lot of deadlines, and meeting the deadlines is like one of the biggest priorities. So if you're not setting your time appropriately and managing your project, it's going to be not great if you don't meet those goals. So definitely just kind of throwing all that in there.
Yeah, when it comes to project management, it definitely sounds like there are ways to make things engaging and fun in both aspects, like gamifying your life or just lots of different apps that are out there. It's
Yeah,
super cool how it all ties together.
there are some that like there's definitely positive reinforcement, and then there's some that like I'm forgetting the name, but there are some websites that do the opposite where you can like do negative reinforcement where you can put money on the line and it'll donate it to a charity that you don't like if you can't prove that you did the task that you were supposed to do. And I
Oh,
think it's very high stakes then. So then you have to do it. But there's definitely things out there, and there's other ones that are like written kitten, which that's more if you're like oriented for word count. So if you're like, I have to meet 500 words and I don't want to, you put in your like 500 words, and every time you like submit it, you get a picture of a kitten. So you can also
oh,
change it to dogs, but it's kind of funny to me that that's a thing. And it's very janky, but because it's very old and unupdated, but it works and there are people who really like it.
oh, I love the sound of both the positive reinforcement and it's funny to hear about the negative reinforcement too.
Yeah, so there's definitely options out there. If you need something for your task, like there's both positive and negative reinforcement.
Oh, that is. Sometimes the internet is just wonderful. Nice. I'm gonna read out some chat messages. Cassandra put a resource for SEO for anyone interested from moz.com. And then it's a beginner's guide to SEO. And Dominic said LinkedIn Learning also has SEO courses. Andrew said Pomodoro is great for all aspects of school and work.
It really is. It's like the easiest thing to do. And there's like so many cool apps for that too. There's like ones where there's Flora, and there's another one I'm just like for some reason forgetting the name of, but you can grow trees essentially. And then as you get points, if you like do well with it, they'll actually plant trees. But you grow a forest, that's the other app. It's Forest. Essentially on both of those apps, you grow plants. But if you're on your phone when you're not supposed to be, it'll kill your plant. So again, high stakes, you don't want to kill your plant. You want to have trees actually planted in the end. So it's kind of cool that you can do that as well. Like I said, there's so many apps out there, but it's a Pomodoro app, so it's based on a time as well. And it's visual for those that like visuals.
Oh, that's super cool. And yeah, it would definitely turn me away from using my phone too much. I'm like, why do I want to start killing trees? Like the
Oh,
reinforcement is
nice.
definitely strong.
Danielle recommended Study Bunny. It's also, she said, super cute and motivating. It's like Flora, but you get to buy accessories for your bunny as a reward. I love that. I've never heard of that, so I'm going to write it down. We need like a project management page and just like all these resources to hold yourself accountable.
Mhm. So true. That can make for a good blog post.
Yeah.
Project management tools. And then Dominic earlier on said, if you like Gantt charts, you can also use Asana. He has a Trello account but hasn't used it yet. But each of those sound like great tools. And Cassandra just said she's a fan of virtual spaces like lifeat.io.
It basically kind of makes like your own like little study room and stuff. And I think you can even put like your Spotify playlist there and like a YouTube video and that can play. And then it also has like a thing that you can do like the Pomodoro method with. Like I think you can even invite people, like your friends with that link to be in your virtual room as well.
That's super cool.
Nice. I like that. I like that. Ooh, maybe we can make an FTC virtual space. Have all of us have a study room. Also, on top of earlier questions and recommendations, I wanted to ask what technical writing skills, you mentioned project management and just general writing skills. What technical writing skills do you feel you develop by being a blogger or by doing blogging?
I think you become more aware of like how you can, in general, add visual components, like in a way that's not, a technical manual. I'd also say just in general, showcasing your writing skill, because a lot of times on tech writing, I feel like everything's more on like it's XML. And it's kind of nice to do something that's not XML where you're just writing and you have a lot more flexibility. So I think you can kind of bring everything together and still talk about things that you care about with the field of tech writing, but also make it more accessible, because a lot of things like we forget when we learn the terminology that people who aren't familiar with our field, that they're kind of like pushed out. And it's almost like a sense of academic gatekeeping, even if it's unintentional. So learning how to be more accessible. And I think being accessible is really important in order for us to do our job and help end users. So I think that's another skill, like learning how to talk to people about everyday topics in our field while also being more accessible.
Awesome, and thank you for that. I like the tie-in of having the writing skills, just having writing be there for its own thing, not having to be focused on the technical aspects, just growing as a writer, which yeah, is definitely a big part of technical writing, just the writing part. So I like how you emphasize that being a benefit. Yeah, very cool. And Andrew asked, what are some great communities or websites for tech writers?
Well, I would definitely say STC. And then I would also definitely say Reddit can be interesting. Of course, it's very much like you never know with what you're gonna, what you're gonna get with Reddit, but there's also a lot of cool people I feel like out there on Reddit that can give you information as well that are in the field.
So I wanted to ask this about your experiences. Uh, do you have any favorite things that you've written or any most memorable writing experiences, either through
Um,
blogging or in general?
I wrote an art, I think it was my first blog post ever, and it was about sharing your space with pets during COVID. And it was definitely relevant to me then, but it's now relevant to me now that I work from home. And I feel like just in general in TechCom, a lot of people work remotely. And so it's kind of like now I have to relearn how to do that now that I've been out of that. So it's definitely one of my favorite articles because I got to put pictures of my dog in there. And I had like, it was very fun because it would be like, take your dog out. If you have a dog, like take your dog out on a walk and take them on a sniffari, which is like letting them sniff different things and like trying to get them calm so that when they come back in the house, they're a little bit more chill. And so it was kind of oriented for different types of pets. But that one was just really fun because it wasn't super writing related, but at the same time, it was talking about like, hey, you have writing assignments that need to get done, but your cat's like sitting on your keyboard. Like, what do you do? So that was really fun and definitely different. And it was needed during that time because everybody was forced online during COVID, especially like early on. And now it's more applicable to me now as like a person that's just a remote worker.
Mhm. Super true. And that sounds like a great article. If at any time you could link it, I'd love to read it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And definitely a very, um, I feel like anyone with pet experiences can definitely relate to that as well. And you brought up a good point as well with remote work. So I wanted to follow up and ask, how do you feel writing, but also just in general, team collaboration? How do you feel that they are different in a remote atmosphere versus an in-person atmosphere? And do you feel like you prefer one side over the other?
I would say that I prefer online mostly because I feel like either way, it's like more awkward if you go over things as a team. Like if you're going over, let's say grammar, I don't know why, it just always feels more awkward. And this is coming from someone that like has been a writing tutor for a very long time. I think that there's a lot of really great collaboration tools that you can use online. I'm a huge fan of Google Docs just in general for the comment feature. But I think just in general, everything can pretty much be done online and you can still have that ability to edit and revise and discuss that with your team. I enjoy working collaboratively. I think that like people often forget that writing is not a solitary thing. Writing should be collaborative. I mean, even outside of tech writing, the writing that we tend to do like in academia, that's all stuff that like, professors, their peers have to read what they're going to publish and things like that. So writing is a very collaborative thing to do. I think that we have really great resources for the time that we live in. Google Docs is definitely one of them. And I think that having the ability to like not have to write the comments down by hand, but let somebody like write a comment in virtual, like just current time, you can see it and go back and forth with them on it. That's great. And it's also like you can kind of process that as well. So I definitely think online has been really fun. And people tend to like edit much quicker now if you do it, especially like online using online tools.
Mhm. Yeah, that's super true. Yeah, online collaboration tools, as we were talking, as you mentioned, and as the group was giving suggestions for, there's so many great ones out there that, yeah, like you said, team-based collaboration opens up the door to things online. I feel similarly. I love just doing teamwork online. Um, honestly, yeah, a lot of it can be done online. So I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah, I
And
definitely think we're lucky too, because like Google, I think Google just in general, the resources that we have through like the Drive, since it's like it's free, they're pretty great. Like I talked about Google Sites earlier. And that's like a free website that you can build. And I think it's actually really well done for being something that's free and accessible. So that's why I kind of suggested that as portfolio. You can definitely throw that in there as long as you have the link and you can give it somewhere. It's a really good resource that's out there. And you can also have people like look over that as well.
That is great. And I've never looked at Google Sites, but I might definitely have to look at it,
Yeah.
especially if it's free.
It's hidden, I swear. If you go on to your Google Drive, you have to like really look for it. But if you type in Google Sites just in Google, it'll come up. But you can build your own site and it's really easy to build a site. So anybody can do it.
Mhm. Yeah, it really must be hidden because I definitely haven't come across it while just like going through my Google apps, but hey, they should advertise it more. It does sound like a great tool. And so we still have a few minutes left for everything. I have two more questions I was going to ask. One, you had mentioned in your presentation, but I feel like if you could describe um, if you could describe to you personally, what would you say are the characteristics of a successful blog?
I would say a successful blog is one that somebody does post pretty frequently because you want to keep your audience like kind of they want to see you on there. It's like the same thing as like if you use social media and you're like marketing, you want your post to be pretty like frequent so that people don't lose interest. You want to remind them that you're still there. And then I also think just incorporating visuals is a really strong aspect. It's not about like really even the content, it's about having fun with the form and the style and making it so like your reader can get all of the information that they need in the quickest possible way. So I would say style and then frequent posts for sure.
Mhm. Definitely, and those are great tips, and I feel like yeah, those will definitely carry a prospective or current blogger far consistent and keeping things styled.
Yeah, and it's very flexible. You can be very creative with it. You can put Spotify music in there if you talk about music. You can put maps in there. So it really is left up to the blogger to kind of decide how they want that format to look. And I think that's to me the most fun part about blogging is kind of organizing it and then structuring what I want to put in there that's not just the text.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely, because yeah, at the end of the day, it kind of ties into tech comp too, how a lot of it is writing, but it's also about designing a page
Yep.
and using diagrams too sometimes and laying
Yeah.
everything out.
And at least with this, you kind of can have fun with it because it's like I said, you could put Spotify accounts in there. That's definitely a thing.
Hmm. Like I would definitely love going onto a blog page and it just plays some amazing jams when I just go onto it. I'd be like, dang, I want to read everything on here suddenly.
Yep.
Oh, cool. And then as we round off things, oh, Michael in the chat says, I got you, John. Oh, yes, that would be great. 10,000 song playlist.
You can't escape it now.
Oh, I can't. I'll have listening material for like a few weeks, a few months. Yes, I'll take it. I'll take it. So, yeah, I guess last question. Last question I had as we round things off. If you had to give one main piece of motivation to anyone after today who's looking to either start blogging or start just like putting posts together, or even just developing their tech writing skills through blogging, any of that, uh, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who's looking to get started or some
Hmm.
motivation?
I hate to sound like an ad, but just do it. uh, just start writing. Your first draft might not be the best, but write it, edit it, revise it, and then just play with the format. I think just like getting familiar with like what options you have based on what website you're using, that's important. So it's really cool that, for example, if you use the LinkedIn Learning and you wanted to learn more about WordPress, there is a place where you can learn about WordPress and the different functions that are available to you. So I would definitely use the like resources available to you and then do a practice round, like write an article and just spend time using the tools, play with the format, see like what different things you can kind of get into with it, and then publish it and go from there. You just got to put yourself out there and definitely use tags.
Mhm. I love that, and I feel like, oh man, I feel like just doing it is a big part of it. I know whenever I start a project, well, the good amount of times I procrastinate on things, and just to do it is a very good motivator for that.
Yeah, and there's so many great tools that are out there to help you. Like we've gone over like Written Kitten, or you can use the Pomodoro method. So there's a lot out there that can help you like just get it done.
Exactly. I'll definitely be just looking through some of the examples that everyone gave today of like including yourself about all these different tools, project management, motivation tools, so many good ones, including Written Kitten, because I mean, like who wouldn't love just writing and then seeing the pet picture? Like, yeah, I'll probably do that.
Yeah, I know like I had a professor who had a hack for it where she insisted that if you changed like there's a section that lets you do it on like the actual platform where you can pick like I think it's bunny, dog, or cat, but there's a way that you can mess with the URL as well and put like a different feature, like you could say dragons and you'd get pictures of dragons. So there are ways. I haven't done that because I usually just stick with the dogs, but it's definitely an option.
I love that, being rewarded by some cool dragon every time
Yeah.
every time you write. Well, especially if you're doing some fantasy writing, just yeah,
Yeah.
that sounds super cool. Right. Those are all that I had. Does anyone in the room or in chat have any additional questions to share Alex's way? All right, I think we went through all the ones that we had, and in that case, though we'll be keeping the call open after this, we can always stop the recording and kind of like do a pause here. But yeah, any last things that you might want to share, Alex?
I think I pretty much covered it. If you're interested in blogging and you want to do something kind of low stakes, feel free to reach out to us, especially on the publication committee. My email is on my outdated resume, so you can always go back watching the recording and email me, and we can chat about maybe like getting you guys on the on our like blog. So yeah, just do it.
Yes, just to do it. And oh man, I mean, yeah, I just loved this presentation. I really I personally got a lot of motivation from it, and I can tell everyone did too. Thanks for just all the great advice and just sharing pieces of your writing experiences and your tips and tricks and some motivation for all of us. Yeah, as everyone's saying in the chat, this really was insightful. So we appreciate you.
Yeah, of course.
Alrighty, so with that being said, we can take a pause, and if anyone wants to drop from the call in about 10 minutes, we're gonna have a mini call for anyone who's attending the SDC Summit. That'll be a separate thing. So we can close things off from here and close the recording soon, but thank you all for listening in. Thank you so much, Alex, for sharing everything tonight. We really enjoyed it. And yeah, we appreciate everyone who came by to participate tonight. Lots of claps in the chat. Alrighty, and for anyone who's watching the recording, I'll be closing it off. But thank you so much for watching, and we hope you enjoy the rest of your day and any of our other recordings, and that you also enjoyed this presentation.